Hello, everyone. Good evening. Well, depending on where you are viewing from, good morning, good evening, good day, everyone. It's good to have us here again this January. You're welcome to Just Design, my design journey. Just Design is a design community to share, learn, and connect with other designers. It's a community essentially for young designers, aspiring designers, and even established designers. And so we expect to be able to share ideas, to come together, to exchange thoughts, concepts, philosophies, and then particularly we hope to learn from each other. And we also hope to learn from designers who can give from their wealth of experience to younger designers. And so today, I want to welcome every one of us to this episode 7. And we have as our guest today architect David Idibe. Interestingly, I've known architect David for a number of years now. I think almost about maybe like 15 to about 15 to 14 years now that I've known David. And so I think it gives me a great pleasure to welcome you on board. Architect David, you're welcome.
I consider it an immense privilege to be hosted by you on this amazing communities channel. Thank you, sir.
Thank you
And it's
very
good to
much.
reconnect and see your smile, sir.
Yeah. And see yours too. And see yours too. Thank you, David. It's good to have you.
Thank you for the
Thank,
privilege. Yes,
thank you
sir.
very much. And so, without much ado, we'd like to get into the purpose of our session today, and which will be that we would like Architect David to share with us a design journey. And I'm sure it's been an exciting one. David is an architect with a lot of creativity. I've known him, like I mentioned, for about 14 to 15 years now. And I think among other things I've known about it, David is very creative. He's a creative designer. I mean, there are designers, yes, but David is one that stands as an exception. I've been known him, and it's been an honor to have you share your experience with our community members today, and I'm sure that there'll be a lot to learn. But before we do that, we'd like to just give a little bio about David, and so just stay glued to our channel, and let's take a little bit of a bio about David.
David J. Idibe is a visionary creative professional and entrepreneur known for his design and leadership contributions. As founder and CEO of Design Cycle Limited, a design-led solutions company based in Lagos. Design Cycle Limited specializes in designing, project managing, and implementing interior design and architecture projects for businesses and individuals. He is also co-founder of Innovation Academy, an educational platform that empowers people with creative and problem-solving skills, training over 400 people since inception in 2017. David is a proud alumnus of Covenant University, where he holds both a bachelor's and master's degree in architecture and design. He has a vision to build Design Cycle Group to become Africa's most innovative design company, with innovation labs across the continent developing solutions that transform organizations, governance, as well as the lives of people and communities across all socioeconomic stratification.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm
Thank
sure
you.
I'm sure the bio does justice to the person of David. And just for our viewers, David will give his session in stock for about 30 minutes thereabouts, and then would also be taking questions, comments. And so please kindly just text your comments in in the chat box, and we'll be willing to take them after David concludes in session. Thank you very much once again, everyone. And David, you're welcome. You haven't changed much since the last time we met. So,
Yes.
so good to have you.
Thank,
So please, you have the
thank you,
floor.
sir. All right. All right. Thank you so much. So I'll just go with the structure already given to me. So I'll start with my student days. I want to start by saying my journey into architecture. I I know there are people that say they knew they'll be architects when they were 2 years old. Well, It's very possible. I believe their story. But my case, I knew much later. When I say later, I don't mean it was really late. It was in my JS1. I began to take note of buildings, and I realized I really liked buildings. And then, as God will have it, I had the opportunity to come to Covenant University to study architecture. And I'll just read a quote here. I penned down a quote some time back. This is how I think of design. Design is the means by which ordinary things can become extraordinary, and how chaos gets transformed into lasting order, beauty, and utility. That's how I think of design. Design is the means by which we translate things from a state of chaos into a state of order, beauty, and lasting functionality. So my days as a student life, you know, I would like to talk about my inspiration when I was a student. I think I was very privileged to have really amazing lecturers. And one of my amazing lecturers, and this is not because it's an interview with you, Dr. Alalade, but you were one of those inspiring lecturers. And I'll say why. I was privileged to be taught by two professors who, have gone home to be with God, to be with the Lord. But I was privileged to because they taught people who were my parents' mates, and I got the privilege to still be taught by those amazing lecturers and professors, Professor Shulanke and Professor Akin. I'm forgetting my professor's name. Yeah, the grandfather of architecture, right? And I mean, having those figures in my life was really amazing because the few lectures we got to have, they gave us a very good bandwidth of the history of architecture in Nigeria and in the world. I think I owe a lot of credit to my lecturers, and I'm really glad I have the opportunity to be in touch with my lecturers. I get to call, I get to receive calls and messages from them. So most of my inspiration came directly from the classroom. And because I was the kind of student who would always go to ask a question after lectures, I think some of my lecturers got really interested in me, and that really aided my journey as a student. And it's something I really encourage young students to adopt. The ability to ask questions. The questions may feel very foolish, but you do yourself a disservice if you hide your questions in your heart, because the question is the doorway for answers, a stream of answers to flow into your heart and your mind. Right. So I remember I would go to Dr. Alade's office. He was my lecturer in structures, and the conversations we had about structures, conversations around education, and conversations around life made it translate into a mentorship relationship. So one of my first mentors in university was Dr. Alalade. Now I want to talk about mentorship from students. I gained a lot of exposure by going to meet older students, people like Bisoyoni, many of them in all levels. And that formed a major part of my inspiration. The other two parts of inspiration I would give credit to is the library. You know, the library is a citadel for learning. It's the treasure box for any college or university. And it's very interesting to know that most students use the library when they are assignments, but the library is always there, and it's always seeking students to come and maximize, her. And I don't know where I learned that from, but somehow I used to just go to the library to look at the books because the architecture section had so many of these colorful books, big books. Just opening and flipping through those pages always brought inspiration to my mind, whether it was with regards to the project at hand or not. I was always inspired by those. And then we had good internet, or we had internet in school. And I would say I drew a lot of inspiration from researching architecture practices, best architects, and I got to know names of architects. I remember that somehow I'll bring new names to class, different architects every other semester, and it was really inspiring to other students as well. And then at some point, this happened much later. I wish it happened earlier. It was during my MSc, which is my postgraduate school. I partook in a competition for the first time. It's privileged to represent my school along a team of other architects, my friends, Ibrahim Osheni, Shola Debi, Frida Somonika, Tola. We went to Ife to represent Covenant University, and that opened our horizon again. So on another level, because we saw these students from different schools around Nigeria coming to represent their schools with amazing ideas. And I think competitions help to expose the minds of students. I'll also put one last part of it. It is collaboration with colleagues, like peer-to-peer review, is so important. Many times we have self silos where you work as an individual, you create your ideas as an individual, and neglect the power of synergy. And maybe the nature of our assignments many times encourage this thing that becomes a bad habit, where we think we can do it by ourselves, or then we go to the internet and download stuff. But working with your peers does something to you. It actually fosters your creative confidence. And another part of it is working with or tutoring and mentoring those behind you. Whatever you learn from lecturers, from your mentors, from like taking that down to the people who are coming behind you is an amazing thing to do. Like, you're paying it forward. You actually can improve the quality of an educational ecosystem by doing that. If you can connect three levels, then you can secure the posterity of ideas. But when you have classes working in layers that are not interacting, what happens is it doesn't flow. The knowledge that is gathered doesn't flow, so it's not retained in that ecosystem. So I will just move to some challenges I had in my schooling days. One of them, really, I had a very amazing time in school. I had many challenges. One of them was finding the balance in school, finding balance. So I went to a missionary school, meaning a Christian based university. So we had our academic life, but we also had a Christian basis. So we had chapel services and programs like that, that a person in, say, Unilag or other institutions outside Nigeria wouldn't have had. So it had a lot of benefits, really. But keeping the balance was something that I needed to learn, but I didn't learn that very early. So sometimes your academic work will suffer because you don't know how to find balance. But although I'm not saying it was really the spiritual programs that affected my balance, I guess it was me who hadn't learned to set structures and systems in place, to manage my time. I think that's something a lot of people in design school suffer. And so projects end up gathering last minute before you have to apply yourself, do more work, have less rest to get things done. So I've covered two of those points. Another thing that happened for me, or to me, was transitioning from drafting, manual drafting, using my hands to draw, to building information modeling, BIM. For me, I know I grew up, my mother happens to, she draws well. She had a desire to study industrial design. So I would say that you can trace some of my interest in the design world to her. And I had some ability, some gifts in graphics. I could draw and I could communicate my ideas visually, in a way that you will understand and you might even really like. But when it was time to transition to building information modeling, I struggled. I didn't embrace it early enough because I didn't buy into the benefits, early enough. And so it took me a couple of years. I struggled till I was in my master's program, and I moved to a tool that was going to help me. I moved to SketchUp. Most of my colleagues were using Revit. It was much after graduation when I was working. which I'll get to, that excited leverage BIM. And I'm so glad I got to, catch up with that, because it changes design. You start to think of design in a data-driven way. You leave, just the creative, artistic representation of ideas to real life, real time, data-driven design decisions that impact on cost, that impact on the ecology, impact on the people, the users. So that's about that. One other bit I would touch right here is competition. Okay, yeah, about it being difficult. We had this idea that architecture had to be difficult. Architecture is the hardest place. It's 99% um, perspiration, 1% inspiration. Architecture is hard. And even in Harvard University, I read a review that talks about the most difficult courses to study in Harvard University. Architecture came number one. It's the same in Princeton. It's the same in Yale. It's the same in MIT. Architecture is the most difficult course. Architecture is the most difficult course because of it. I will think it's because of something ingrained in the psyche of the architect that translates into education. It doesn't have to be that way. I have thoughts about why it can be different. Another thing is competition. I think I saw something. I'm not. I don't think I'm not better than, colleagues that had that trait. I could have been the one. It just happened to be that for some reason I'd been helped, and I didn't see it that way. There was a lot of competition. People wanted to compete against their colleagues, so bad that my work was stolen maybe like twice, and my colleagues will bear witness to this. So I'll steal my portfolio with drawings, and then I won't be able to submit till like a week after. I remember Dr. Alalabe would, Professor Alabe now, he would talk to them and say, whoever did this will return this young man's work. It happened twice. And all of such things are unnecessary, because the true competition is not your neighbor. The real competition is who you were yesterday. And when you realize that your neighbor is here because he is like you and she's like you, and there's an opportunity. If you work with your neighbor, the least you can do is to encourage your neighbor, your colleagues, your classmates. But that attitude of competition is an attitude of scarcity, because you think that the grades are limited. You think that the ideas are limited. I remember one day someone came and met me and said, David, I saw somebody using your letter S. Now, I developed my lecturing quite early, and my lecturing is quite clear, and people say it looks beautiful. I learned that from some of my friends who were in Kaduna Polytechnic. I lived in Kaduna, I grew up in Kaduna. Whenever I went on holidays, I was always there with them. And I didn't despise them. Oh, these are Polytechnic people, I'm a university person. There's nothing like that. We're all people, and everybody has something to contribute. So competition, someone said, oh, David, I saw someone using your S. I said, lecturing is like air. It's in the air, take your own. Like I remember saying that was in my second year. And that's how it is with everything. Ideas are like that. There's no limit on ideas. There's no limit to possibilities. So to think that if you have something, there's no bankruptcy with God. Everything is abundant. So yeah, with that, I think I can proceed to the second part of my introduction, which is some of my lessons is collaborate. My lessons are collaborate with your peers, find mentors, go to them. Not everybody will come to you. Go to people, ask questions, and when you get answers, share those answers, pay it forward, teach others. Try to socialize. I had a lot of friends in engineering. If I could do it again, I'll have more friends, in CDS, which is the College of Development Studies, non-science people, arts people, commercial people. Interact, because life after school is not life in studio. It's not. Relationships are everything. And build those relationships. Have healthy friendships outside the studio. And then become committed to lifelong learning. I'll talk about that when I'm talking about my experience in work. And don't be limited to your curriculum. I know the things I'm saying at this stage sound like I'm talking to students primarily, or yeah, it's just because of the part of my journey. don't be limited to your curriculum. There's always the opportunity to research who's the leading architect in this, who's the person who has produced, what's the Pritzker Award about? Who are those who have won Pritzker in the last 10, 30 years? All of these things expand and broaden our horizon. One thing I would say is Dr. Alalade had an interesting approach teaching structures. Building structures is one of the three legs of architectural education. It's building design, it's building components, and building structures. The components are all of the parts of it. The structures is how it stands. Now, instead of approaching structures as a mathematical endeavor, he approached it as a logical endeavor. So what happened with us was we would think by doing case studies. You gave us Shimizu Pyramid, you gave us the Burj Khalifa, you gave us the Burj Al Arab as case studies to understand structures. I think that's what education is about. Bishop Idibe will say that education is about equipping the mind to think possibilities. That was something you helped us do. We thought possibilities because we're exposed to what people were doing, answers people were finding in the industry. So I would have to brush quickly. So the next part of it is life after school, becoming a professional. One bit, this is after my master's program, 2014. And the second bit is building a practice from 2017 to 2024. So far. So my training years. So between 2014 and 2017, I'll call those training years because I'm still in training. But then I was working, by privilege under a lifetime project opportunity. I got a call on October 3rd, 2015 from, please, my time, I'm trying to manage it as much as I can. But Dr. Alalade called me and told me there was an opportunity he wanted me to be part of. Sir, I'll use this opportunity to say thank you again for your vote of confidence in me. Thank you for thinking that I could be on that journey with you. It's such an amazing journey. It's a massive journey. The whole world knows that that's a massive journey. But I noticed something. The first week when we started working together, this was in CST, this very small office beside Dr. Alade's office. We did research on the stadia in the world. We probably researched up to 80 stadiums in the world. We researched 46 covered stadia. These are big numbers. We had a document that was almost 100 pages of case studies. We studied them, their capacity, the type of structure, the types of roof, all of those things. And that reinforced a learning attitude in me. The attitude of researching and not thinking you know it, asking the right questions, probing to get the right answers. Another thing I would say happened during my becoming a professional. It was this one happened very indirectly. It wasn't direct. It was writing. So sometimes Dr. Alalade will give me a draft. I'll write a response to maybe a prospective vendor, prospective contractor for the ARC project. It was called the Faith Legacy Project at the time. And by reading those mails and writing responses, asking what he thought of those drafts, what happened without me by induction was my writing got better. And I'm talking professional and corporate writing. This is not something you learn in school. They don't teach you professional and corporate writing. In fact, they don't teach you writing. They give you assignments. And I say they, I'm included because I'm in education. So I'm not trying to blacklist anybody. But I'm saying that there's a gap in writing because writing is one of the primary medium for thinking. Your thinking is not complete until you write. Because when you write, you put your thinking in a visual form where you can properly analyze your arguments, see their strengths, see their weaknesses, and improve on them. So I got the privilege to learn corporate writing by induction. Because if anybody who has worked with Dr. Alalade will realize that. And also because he writes to someone who's very intelligent and very critical, a genius, really, Bishop Idibe, who can see through the lines and see what you're not saying and see what you're saying. Dr. Alalade already had this thing developed from maybe your student years. But I saw it, and by induction, I think I got that. And I'm enjoying the benefits now in my practice in corporate world. Okay. So another thing I think was a major part of my becoming a professional was working with an A team. Guys, I worked with an A team. So as the project began to expand, or our understanding of the project began to expand, Dr. Alade gave me a task: get your colleagues that are competent and you believe can, you know, run on this project. And that's what we did. I started to make calls. I called some of my colleagues that we had collaborated together on different capacities. I didn't call them because we're friends. I called them because if you design with these guys, you will produce answers. And I knew his expectation. I knew Dr. Reddy was not expecting people that would come with one leg in and one leg out. He wanted people that were committed. And so it informed the kinds of people. And I believe that God set up the team by himself. It wasn't, I don't take credit for that. I first give credit to Dr. Alalade, first, but I give the credit to God because he already made them ready, and when we came together, there was a point where we're like 8, and there's a point where we're like 10, there's a point where they had younger colleagues join us. It was phenomenal. We used to work in Dr. Alade's office and we'll sleep on the rug. This happened in 2015 from October till November 10th when we had the first presentation to Bishop Oyedepo of the Arc Legacy project. And that was an intense time. It was intense. Dr. They had very minimal sleep. Dr. Obi had, no, these were men of sacrifice, and they were financing us with their money. We're not on salary yet because we're not fully integrated into the system. There's so much I can say about this phase of my life, but I want to say, working in that kind of team is something I will not take out of my journey, my design journey. So much that I've learned came out of that experience. It was 2 years, but it was some of the most powerful years of my education. It was after school, but it was a core part of my education. Then so that's Arc Legacy Project. I want to talk about transitioning to find my own path. So in 2017, it became very clear to me that it was time to move. And it's not an easy thing to transition from a job to starting out on your own. Design Cycle, yes, had started in 2014, which I'll talk about soon. But I needed to transition. I got advice. I spoke to my mentor. I spoke to Dr. Alalade. Spoke with a couple of people. I knew I was to do this. It wasn't easy. Bottom line is God helped me to take this step. I was leaving my comfort zone and I was striking out to a terrain that I really couldn't define. I didn't know what was waiting for me, especially in Lagos. I didn't know. Right. So I'll talk about practice. So practice, the first point I'll make about practice, which is 2017 till today, betting on yourself. You have to take a bet on yourself. By taking a bet on yourself, people will take a bet on you. They'll follow and they'll take a bet on you. But you have to take a bet on yourself. I want to give credit to Professor Mary Taiwo, former DVC of Covenant University. I remember when I went to the proposal, we could do this for the Digital Design Studio, 2015, before I joined Dr. Alade on the project. I said, we can do this for the design studio. And they gave us the opportunity. She believed in us. And we went, the VC accepted the proposal and said, do this. We did it. Today it's in our portfolio. I might not show that project, but I'm saying that to say you have to take a bet on yourself. You don't do that when you feel you have all the skills. You start with what you have. You have something, so move with it. And then sometimes we win, sometimes we learn. That's something John C. Maxwell said. Sometimes we win, sometimes we learn, right? So we don't lose, we learn. There's an opportunity to do it better, to do it differently, to implement some new innovation, to have knowledge you didn't have before. Steve Jobs says that it's 20 vision is 2020 from hindsight. In hindsight, so when you look back, it's clear to see everything, but the dots only connect when you look backwards, right? And then be teachable. When you are teachable, you have no limits because who said this, said, if I've seen any further, it was because I stood on the shoulders of those who were ahead of me, right? I think that applies to every bit of life, including work. And you must see mistakes as part of the process. Mistakes are part of the process. It was Robert Schuller that said, success is not never ending and failure is never final. Exactly. So seeing that mistakes are part of the process of growth and development is very important. And one thing I'll say, a major lesson in practice, which is something we are doing now, is building systems. It's never too early to build systems. The earlier you build systems, the more you can focus on the work that matters. Otherwise, your energy becomes randomly invested. You will not delegate enough. You will not automate enough. And that's where our firm is now. We're in a stage where we're building systems more deliberately because the vision we have is very clear. The work we must do is build the systems required to realize that vision. Right. So I have 15 more minutes to crown all of this. So I'll just jump to my design philosophy. So my design philosophy is is I put that in three bits, creativity and you. That's you as a person. I believe that creativity, I've heard this quote by a man called Chris Du. I don't know if it was his original thought, but it says that creativity is the ability to see connections between seemingly disparate ideas. To see connection between seemingly disparate ideas. Why is it right that it's seemingly? It's seemingly because it only appears like they're not connected. But the truth is, if they were made by the same mind, right, they have a degree of connection. So seeing the connection is where creativity happens. Creativity is a matter of sight. Another thing I believe is that creativity is innate, and we were all born creative. There's nobody. People think that the ability to draw is where their creativity lies, and I believe that's a lie. We learned it. We all learned that lie. Your creativity is not in your ability to draw. It was David Kelly, the founder of IDEO, who said that he wrote a book called Creative Confidence, and he noticed the gap that many young children, they grow out of their creativity as they get educated. Another thought I want to say is you are creative, and the reason you are creative is you were made in the image of the creator. So you are creative. It's a seed that can be nurtured. And if you've gone through cynicism where people have told you you're a blockhead or whatever, you're not creative, you can still learn to be creative. You can get it by induction, you can get it by just an open heart that is curious. A few names I'll just drop quickly with regards to creativity and you. Austin Kleon is the writer of the book Think Still Like an Artist. Ken Robinson, he is a professor from, I think, late professor right now. He talked about education and creativity. George Land, he was a researcher from NASA, and he has a video about creativity. You should watch it. Just check George Land. David Kelly is the writer of Creative Confidence. He's the founder of IDEO. I must say something about IDEO. IDEO created the first Apple mouse. IDEO worked on the design of the Apple Pencil. IDEO worked on some of the most innovative answers we have in Africa, in healthcare, in Asia, in healthcare. They are one of the case studies for design cycle, them and Gensler. So for design philosophy architecture, I'll just rush through some of my thoughts for time's sake, so I can go into the projects we have and talk about design cycle. So God is the ultimate designer. Therefore, good design always mimics his handiworks. So the more you can look at the world around you and map design to the intelligence in the environment, the better your design will be, because it's already been thought out by a master creator. Design thinking, I'll talk about that, is a great system for solving problems, because inside design thinking, at the core of it, is a high value for people. It's high value for people, and the experiences of those people is not client centered, it's people centered. And that's nothing in Nigeria. There's something I've noticed in the industry. We want to please the client, and it's right to please the client, but not at the expense of the experience of the user. The user is the person who gets touched by the way we think, the quality of our thinking the most. So I would say that it's so important that we prioritize the user. Design matters because people matter. I'll say one other thing about architecture. You see, when God made the earth, right, the first thing was the environment. That has two levels. The first is creation, seas, land, trees, and all of those. The second is creation, right? So creatures, rather. The second is creatures. But eventually, he put something on earth that was to have governance over earth, and that's called man. That was the only one that was made in his image. By putting man in the environment, man could unlock potentials that earth did not have, that earth had, but other creatures would not be able to see. And so, what happens when you put man in an environment that you have the built environment? Now, the quality of every built environment is largely dependent on the quality of the man, the thinking. And who is a man? A man is as he thinks in his heart. The way a person thinks in their heart is who they are. So, the quality of your thinking is the quality of your life. That's who you really are. And so, we must invest in the man, in how we think, the quality of our thinking, and it translates into the kind of environment we have. I can talk about tropical architecture and tell you how Nigeria should be largely a tropical architecture-oriented place. But we're not. We import architecture from the temperate because it looks good, because our friends have such. I can say a lot there, and I wouldn't. I'll run away from it. And I'll just say one thing about architecture. I'll say good architecture is not imposed. You don't take something you think is beautiful from Dubai and place it in Nigeria. No. Good architecture emerges from the site. It emerges from the site. And in the end, it looks like it was always there. It's unobtrusive. Dieter Rams, the German design philosopher and one of the great designers that inspired Johnny Ives, the product designer of Apple, he one of his 10 principles of design is good design is unobtrusive, meaning it doesn't block your view. It's organic. It comes out of the place. Awesome. I'll just say two things about truth, and I'll show you some of the things that we've been privileged to do, talk about my team with whatever time I do have. And I'll talk about truth and life. This is all part of my design philosophy. Man builds cities because God builds cities. The reason man builds is because God builds. Man thinks because God thinks. Man creates because God creates. That tells us that God is the original and man is his copy. That's what image is, copy. Original and copy. So the wise thing to do is to copy God. That I don't say more than that. Copy God. Seek to copy God. That's it. I'll leave that one blank. Awesome. Then the next thought is, someone I listened to, his name is Myron Golden. Myron Golden was talking about an experience he had. He met with a physicist, and he asked him, he said, what's the most amazing principle you've seen in physics? Like the most amazing scientific principle. The guy said, this is the principle. If you find that a principle is true in any arena, it must follow that that principle is true or must be true in all arenas. Guys, this guy was talking from nano physics and quantum physics. It is amazing. It's so important. What he was saying is, if something is true, it is true universally. So you can look at any system that works. It can be the water cycle. It can be the circulatory system of the human body. It can be the digestive system. Whatever systems you can look at, God made systems. If you look close enough, you find answers that you can apply to transportation systems in Nigeria. You can find to housing situations in Nigeria. If it is a true principle in any arena, it follows that it's true in all arenas. Amazing. So I want to talk about Design Cycle. Design Cycle was founded in 2014. The idea for Design Cycle dropped in 2014. I was reading a quote. I was reading an article by Strive Masiwa the owner of Econet. He was talking about Nigeria and how Nigeria is the force that Africa must look to and the world must not ignore. It was 2014, exactly 10 years ago. I was reading it and he said something. He said that the projection, the UN Population uh, Council had an estimated population projection of 500 million Nigerians by 2050. I said, how? If this happens, what will happen to this thing called Nigeria? Like, this project is dead. Because if we approach 500 million people the way we're struggling to approach, we were still maybe 120 or 150 as at 2014. We're 200 plus now, million people. That hit me hard. And I said, we need to find people, we need people that can solve our large problems and our small problems. And while I was thinking that day, to be honest, the light bulb went off. I'd been reading about IDEO, Gensler, and how they were doing big things in the world. But that day, the light bulb went off and we said, you can build that. You can actually be there. You can do something about it. Like, don't just wait for someone to change the world. You can solve some problems in this coming Nigeria. It's 500 million strong Nigeria. He said it will be the third largest country in the world, behind India, China, and it's going to be so large. I saw the opportunity to answer the problems. And I've been exposed to design thinking. So it was really about solving problems. And that's why Design Cycle stays on the innovation lane. Right. I'll just move quickly through some things. So this is how we started. I've already covered that. I knew that Africa needed bespoke answers. So what are we doing in Design Cycle? We're building Africa's powerhouse for innovative design solutions in the built environment. We're focused on the built environment. And we want to build the powerhouse that equips the people to solve their problems. That's it. And so we want to build an ecosystem of ideas. And that's what we're doing. We're building an ecosystem of ideas where people leverage the power of design. Design is powerful. The power of technology to scale answers, and compassion. Compassion is nothing if it's not born out of a heart that values people, a heart that sees people, to solve the problems in the built environment. That's what we're about. So we aim to solve problems for people, for organizations, communities, and governments, and with the answers that they desperately need. So how would I describe our identity? We are a thinking company, we're a people company, and we're a solutions company. That's Design Cycle in a nutshell. And I'm privileged to be on the founding team of Design Cycle with two amazing men. These are my brothers. We're friends before we started working together. We're brothers before we started working together. And it's been, years, almost, we're heading to 10 years. It's been years of camaraderie. It's been years of sacrifice. It's been years of sharing a vision and growing and making mistakes together and forgiving each other and learning what is the better way to pursue things and drive things, right? So there's a lot to say about my team, but I'll just move forward to talk about our process. So we have a process where, for example, in project management and interior design, we have a first call, then we have a 60-minute meeting, right? And that moves to is something we do. So when we have that 60-minute meeting, it's supposed to help us to filter whether we are going to work with these clients, whether we're interested in this project, and then it translates into a formal engagement. When we have that formal engagement, usually the ideal thing is that the client gets to pay a percentage of the fees, showing that they are truly, genuinely committed to the project, and that our intellectual property is not going to be put in a cast in aspersion. So that's the second part of the process. Research and conceptual design is the next. So we leverage the research. We don't assume that we have the answers. We try to find the right questions through discovery. And by asking those questions, a lot of insight gets drawn from the client and the environmental context and everything. And it flows into detailed design, mobilizing execution of the project, and afterwards, post-occupancy evaluation. So it's similar with architectural design, very similar, but there's a difference. It pivots at a stage called schematic design, and then it goes to design development, construction documentation. These parts are very important, but they are not the sweetest parts, but they're the necessary parts, because having the process clearly stated, helps you to be able to manage the project, one, and manage the outcome, manage the quality of delivery, because you can see where things go wrong and you can modify stuff. So I'm asked to share three of my, really the projects, three projects that's really got or get us excited. So I'll start with one project is FVIP, is a mixed use development. So it has live, work, play. It's on a 6 hectare property in Kejajeri, Lagos. So I'll just show the slides. Look at this project. So we have a 5-star hotel proposed. There's 10 floors. An apartment hotel, which is like an apartment hotel. Say a company like Hilton comes in to make the investment. Hilton will also manage this short lease apartment, right? It has about over 120 suites, this apart hotel. I moved to an apartment complex, which is it's the central node of this project. It sits on a 1 hectare piece, right, which is 2.5 acres. And yeah, it's an amazing one. Recreational facilities around it. Now, this project, we are privileged to work with a strong team of professionals. On the architectural front, we are collaborating with another architectural practice. In fact, the oldest architectural practice in Nigeria is Design Group Nigeria. They had been with the clients for over 10 years while they were trying to get all the approvals from the federal government to have this long-term lease of property. And so when we came up with master plan, it was agreed by the clients that we should collaborate with them to pursue the realization of the project. And we're really excited about that because there's a lot of experience to build. There's a lot of wealth of experience to leverage. And so I moved to another project for a hospitality client, Blue Lodge Hotel. This was a renovation project. It started out with renovating bedrooms. We did 15 bedrooms between 2022 and 2023, and then moved into a reception, a lobby, which is what you're seeing on the screen. We moved there to the restaurant renovation for them, and currently we're about to start a lounge renovation, and they want another structure there. So what happens, I would say, is when people realize that you're here and you have the capacity to give their business value, to be very frank, they will stick with you and they will recommend you to people that they know. And so we haven't built a very strong sales force to generate leads and convert leads. But we're really grateful to God for the referrals that we have. We have people that, believe in our work. They've tested our work and they want to give opportunities to us wherever they find. So I want to talk about a project. I mentioned this to someone on the Just Design team, to Joyce. It's active learning spaces. This is a project I'm really excited about. This project, even though we've never had the opportunity to implement it as we envisioned it. We've not had that opportunity, but we know that the opportunity will come. And we are ready for the opportunity when it comes. Because we sat down to do something that's at the heart of design cycle, which is innovation. In 2018, when I transitioned out of paid employment, and we're just trying to find our way and navigate, the industry, everything was slow and quiet. But we thought about something. We had a passion for education. My thesis in design school was sustainable learning spaces. My co-founder Shola, his thesis was also on learning spaces. So there was already high energy for education, high passion for transforming the quality of learning. And so we started to research about something called active learning spaces. So the problem was that most classrooms in Nigeria do not promote student-centered learning. It's teacher focused. So the teacher is making a presentation typically. Whereas a learner-centered space is one that equips the students to take their learning into their own hands, because their mobility, their classroom is adaptable to different models of learning, from team learning, project learning, discussions, and all of those things happen with that. Another thing that is a problem that we identified was poor integration of technology. Now, we were not trying to get into tech, right? But we saw that if you don't leverage technology, you are behind in education. Another thing was pedagogy, which is the models of education needed to change. Now, we're not trying to solve all of those. We're going to focus on the classroom learning environment and how to make it more adaptable, you know. So the solution we saw or discovered was space optimization plus tech integration plus pedagogy facilitation. And we're going to do this in a consulting capacity as well as a management capacity. We spent about 3 months, or the first 3 to 5 months of 2018, researching and curating this solution. Now, we did not invent this solution. Some companies like Steelcase in America and IDEO had pioneered active learning spaces, and they've been trying to drive it to the world. But it hasn't really been fully adopted. And I'll say why from our own experience. So we had this prototype. So this is a prototype, basic education discussion mode. So students sit down and they can discuss. The whole class is very interactive. Then there's a secondary prototype where we have team mode. Students can sit in groups of threes, groups of six, groups of four, and then they can work together on their assignments, projects. There's so many bits of it. There's a furniture part, there's the acoustics part, there's the lighting, there's the display part of it. All of this is meant to improve the quality of delivery of knowledge for the students at whatever learning level they find themselves, right? What we did was we proposed this to the schools we thought had the capacity to adopt our solution. Why did we think they had the capacity? Well, their school fees is high, and their school fees was around 1 to 5 million in 2018 per annum, secondary schools. And we streamlined them. We used demographics and psychographics of this matter to streamline about 16 to 20 of these schools. We marketed to the degree we could at the time. We noticed something. The educational organizations were not so keen on innovation of the classroom. They were not really into. Some of them they sounded a bit happy, nice, nice. But to put their money where their mouth was the challenge we discovered. Another prototype here is tertiary, very similar to the other one. And there's something called the tertiary node prototype. This is what's going to be in partnership with a company called IDEO. IDEO again created this node chain. It's one of the most innovative things that's happened in the classroom in the last 150 years. Because classrooms today, not just in the third world, what they call the third world, which is a very derogatory description of Africa, right? It is exactly as it was when Henry Ford and the masterminds behind public education of the Industrial Revolution started the classrooms the way they were. We haven't really innovated there. Everything else has innovated, from slates to blackboards to whiteboards to glass magnetic marker boards to screens that are interactive to tablets and bring your own devices in schools. The space has not changed, right? But what we saw was we were not getting kind of back in and buy-in from educators that we thought we were going to get, right? We haven't pushed that idea since 2019. In 2019, we had the opportunity to host an event for active learning spaces at British Council in partnership with Design Week Lagos. And it was a very good outing. We're yet to see the type of acceptance to innovation in the classroom and in education that we envision, but we know it will happen. And when it does happen, we hope to have inspired other people to further the conversation around learning spaces and why the quality of the learning environment translates to the quality of the learner and the thinker and the leader. So with that, so this is another picture of the library, proposed library for schools. This could work at tertiary or secondary or basic education level. So why am I excited about this project? I'm excited about this project because we pushed out of the comfort of what an architectural practice is known for, which is architecture as a service that is client dependent. So we get a call from a client, we're excited, we do the project, we get the next project, we manage it, we're sustainable enough, we can manage tens of or hundreds of such projects. But I said in the beginning that Design Cycle is not an architecture company. Design Cycle is an innovation company. That's what we believe ourselves to be, and that's what we're working at. And so this was a case study for us of moving outside waiting for a client to looking at the problems that people were facing and thinking of answers, developing answers by research for that problem. And we have done that in other scopes. So, for example, an IDP proposal we had. Some of these things have not seen the light of day yet. But I remember that Zaha Hadid, her best ideas after Frankfurt Fire Station, which one had a Pritzker in the early 2000s. Some of her ideas that she worked on in the 80s and in the 90s, they took flight in Abu Dhabi, they took flight in UAE, they took flight in England, they took flight in Europe, because she spent the time building an innovation-driven practice. So it is a matter of time. If you focus on answers as an individual, if you focus on knowledge, if you focus on what can transform the experience of people, the time will come. And when the time comes, you smile because you see those answers directly impact the lives of the people that you once hoped and dreamed to touch. So I think I'm open to questions at this point. I don't know how much I think I've spent my time, but please let's go with questions if there are questions for me. Thank you, Dr. Alalade, for being gracious with me and extending my time. I think that was really helpful. Am I being heard? Please.
Yes.
Because I'm not getting any feedback.
Yes. There's a question for you, David. I can hear you. Sorry. I think I just got back on this. The student just put me on now. So there's a question for you from Joyce. Can you see it?
Oh, I can. Okay. Joyce Adeleke is asking how I would like to find out how you dealt with creative block. And as a design student. Creative block is real. But more real is our victory. so I would say one way I dealt with creative block is I will go to my lecturers, the people that gave me the brief, go to them. Go to them. They don't bite. Some of them look like they bite, but they don't bite. Go there and ask the questions, and you would get ideas from them. You will. I used to get ideas. I remember I used in my third year, I designed a school of architecture, right? And my theater was in the middle of the courtyard. How did I design the roof? It was a folded plate. Dr. Alalade, you remember? I came to you. I was just talking about the space. And then you said, David, do you know Felix Candela? I said, Felix Candela, who's this? He said, researching. I went there. I read Felix Candela. Now, Dr. Alalade had used Felix Candela's research work on folded plates to do his ecumenical center in his thesis many years before me. My guys, that's it. The ideas, they are there. If you can talk to people, you get the ideas you need. Secondly, leave your computer. Leave your computer. Shut it down. Carry your pencil and do random things with your pencil. Don't be too bent on digital tools. You have to engage your own hand to put your ideas visually in a way you can see your ideas and develop them. So go to the library, find colorful books, any book that has pictures, even if it's food, just be flipping the pages. Remember, Chris Du said that creativity is the ability to see connections between seemingly disparate ideas. So you might be looking at a food video and get the answer to a building project. So open your mind, and yeah, that's what I'll say. That's how I did it. It helped. It worked for me. Yeah. Music is very good also. Very good. Classical music is greater.
Yeah, I think all the Yannis of this world, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the Yannis of this world.
The Yannis.
Yeah, I think David. I mean it's been a very exciting time. I must commend you. I mean I wasn't surprised anyway. I need the stuff you always add, and it isn't changed. I think it's only getting better by the day. I must
Thank you,
commend your
sir.
sagacity. I must commend the simplicity of your sagacity. I'll put it that way. Sagacity, but very simple. And you are very down to earth and very open. I'm sure our community members, our viewers, will be able to learn a lot from a very exhaustive. Uh, I mean, it's like you put like 10 years in this 1 hour. I want to say thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank
for
you
the
very
privilege.
much.
I
And I
appreciate
think
it.
your team, Design Cycle, my guys, thank you. Shola and Osage, we're brothers, we're blood. I mean, thank you very much. I
Thank you
think I
so
just
much.
want to highlight a few things you mentioned, just like a recap. And I think I'll start with the last quote about creativity being the ability to make connections between disparate ideas. And I think this is for me, this is where you know, design and innovation, starts from. It's not about waiting for that El Dorado. That's waiting. At times, and I think for me that's the major area where your design is going to shed light for young designers and even aspiring designers and even established ones. Is that you don't have to wait for that El Dorado moment.
Hmm.
You can just keep working and keep connecting ideas, keep picking ideas from this
Hmm.
place, from that
Exactly.
place, from the environment, and then they may not look like it, right? But just put them together.
Mm-hmm.
As you do that mastication in your mind somewhere, you are creating something new. And so for me, of course, I already said that creativity can be taught, and I think that's one of my most recent, no conviction. Of course, you know that
Hmm.
as a student, I always wanted you guys to know that creativity design can be taught. No doubt,
Yeah.
there is an aspect of talent in design, but greater is the fact that
Mm-hmm.
there is a dimension of nurture in design, in creativity.
Exactly.
People
I
can
agree.
learn creativity. People can learn design. It doesn't have to be that you are born with it. No, and I think for me,
I agree.
that's the essence of this platform to show that design can be learned. And as people listen to these conversations over and over, people will begin to see how design becomes easier by the day. And so we expect to bring in, you know, matured designers, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. And I can tell you, you can shrink time by
Mm-hmm.
exposure. And
Mm-hmm.
and that's what I also
True.
saw from what you said about influences. You mentioned about the fact that your lecturers, professors, by to you great influences. You mentioned about your friends in Katanapoli. You mentioned about
Yeah.
collaboration. Your friends in engineering. Of course, I recall our adventure when we began legacy design, the faith theater. Then we had some folks from engineering, and
Exactly.
their input into the work, I mean, was crazy. Just, I mean, like very interesting. And I
Very
mean,
true.
we were architects, we could use BIM, we could use all the softwares, but these guys just came in with something very dramatic. And that
True.
thing just freaked our work. Now,
Yeah,
that's
it
the
did.
power of collaboration. I mean, and of course, you mentioned your competition at IFE. And I think for me, this I think that, designer students should be able to embrace the idea of collaboration that can happen also as you expose yourself to competitions, expo- to different foray.
Yeah.
And so for me, I picked those things from your session. Of course, the fact that educating the mind to think possibilities. Uh, Education should not just be about the rhetorics, right? It should be about solution-driven education, thinking solutions. So I think, David, I mean, you've done justice to our session today. I can tell you this
Thank
session
you.
will go down in history as a very, very significant one. And of course, you mentioned
Thank you
in
so much.
practice, said sometimes we win, sometimes we learn. I mean, that's
True.
fantastic. I'm sure you are really having a good cruise of that. Sometimes we win, sometimes we learn. And of course, as we begin to wrap up, if I have seen any further, is by standing on the shoulders of
Mm.
giants. And really that for me, I keep going back to the essence of just design, and our major theme is my design journey. We want designers who have gone the path to show us how they've navigated the day. the design path and their own journey, and we can shorten our own journey by seeing what they've done. I mean, for instance, you mentioned that the fact that you were able to spend the first 3 to 5 months of your practice creating your own ideas, your own solution. So, meaning, as a young designer in practice, you don't have to just stay glued. Oh, no job, no business. I'm just there. No, it's
No.
about you can do something. And of course, it's clear now by the kind of briefs you now have. And so I'm really glad at the growth of design cycle of your team. We are proud
Thank
of
you, sir.
you. We are rooting for you, and we
Thank you
can
so
only
much, sir.
wish you the best. We can see you. I mean, I can't forget our conversations around Gensler. And by the way, I must tell the world,
Of
you were
course.
the person that told me for the first time about Gensler. I mean, and so
Oh,
it's a very interesting conversation. I mean, I must tell the world, and Gensler
thank
today
you. Thank God,
has
sir.
been a major force shaping my then ideology about practice,
Hmm.
because I see
Hmm.
their work. There isn't anything so
Mm-hmm.
so so
Yeah.
strange, so radical. But
No,
yet
no,
these
no.
guys are leading practice in the world. And so for me, I'm learning a lot from Gensler.
Hmm.
And of course, which goes back to the fact that you know uh, we must always look at exposure. We must look at influences on our journey as designers. We must expose ourselves to global practices and be able to glean from them and improve what we do. And so, David, thank you very much. And to our
Thank
audience,
you so much, sir,
thank you
for the
very much.
privilege.
Same
It's been
here.
an exciting one for me.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you. All right,
Thank
guys.
you.
So, thank you very much. And we hope to be here next month by God's grace. We'll send out the notice. It will be another interesting designer that I'll be having. And I'm sure the conversation will get better and better by the day. Thank you very much. And to also commend our community admin and manager, Joyce, at the background. Thank you for doing a great job. You
All of
made this
choice.
work, this particular session, wonderful. She put in a lot of work in the last 1 month to 2 months. Thank you very much, Joyce, and God bless you. David, thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
All
Thank you
right.
so much. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, guys.
Okay.